Imagine you and your family have been confined to a basement in Homs, Syria. You've been there for days, and the days seem to be getting longer and longer because your food and water supplies are diminishing. Your only choice is to send one of your family members out into the streets of Homs in hopes of returning with those supplies that are so desperately needed. The caveat: that family member may never return. This loss of loved ones and the loss of innocent civilian lives has become a serious problem within the last year in Syria. As a political science major with an international relations focus and human rights focus, this moral dilemma is extremely interesting to me. The government of Syria has been acting morally wrong, and innocent civilians have been caught in the crossfire. First, I'm going to explain how the Syrian government's moral decisions have been wrong in the past, how they are currently wrong in the conflict that they're dealing with now, and how the larger Middle Eastern area is being affected. Syria's moral decisions in the past have been extremely horrific. According to a November 8, 2011 PBS Frontline documentary, Syria Undercover, the Regime, at pbs.org, the Syrian conflict has extended much longer than just the past few months or year. The current Assad family has been ruling for 4 decades, and when they came into power, it was understood that there would be less liberty to equate to more stability. The Iran Revolution in 1979 shook things up. When the Shah was removed, Syria became a little nervous that their own people might try to do the same thing. According to the documentary, and I quote, "In 1982, the Syrian government regime launched one of the worst massacres in the history of the Middle East. The regime used artillery to level large parts of the town. Between 10 and 30,000 people were killed or disappeared by the regime. The fact that the regime thought they could merely wipe out portions of their population goes to show that they feel that their consequences have no moral accountability. They killed many, and in 2000, the current president promised reform. He kind of fulfilled that promise, as seen here, through the lifting of exit permits, allowing more trade, and even introducing the internet. However, 2003, the old regime felt there had been too much reform. So in 2005, intellects and activists were arrested. Through these arrests and continued drought and unemployment was sort of the catalyst to the current problem that Syria faces today. Syria's government has behaved extremely morally wrong with the way they've dealt with the current conflict. According to a March 7th New York Times article, the Miller and Gladstone reported that the government has tortured and deprived those living in Homs. However, any reporting of this, the government denies and simply calls enemy propaganda. According to the Christian Science Monitor on March 8th, not hundreds, but thousands of men, women, and children have been systemically shot, tortured, and killed. This loss of life goes to show that those who aren't losing it are fighting for it. According to a March 8th New York Times article entitled "Syrian Officials Say in the Video He's Joining the Uprising," activists, and I quote, say that swaths of the country are losing food, water, and medical supplies. Just some of these innocents goes to show that the Syrian government is completely acting in disregard to human rights. So, how are they affecting the larger Middle Eastern area? According to a New York Times article in March, Josh Wood said that Lebanon and Jordan are the countries being hit the hardest by this conflict. Syrian refugees and internationally displaced persons are fleeing to these neighboring countries, and the countries are the ones who have to deal with it. According to the same article, it is said that Lebanon, and I quote, "its most visible economic impact of the crisis is that Syria has been the lack of tourists. More specifically, their tourism rate has decreased by 24%, according to the United Nations World Tour Organization. That's as of March 7th of this year. It's only gotten worse since then. That same New York Times article claims that Jordan, the pink country, that their economic suffering through their unemployment rate and increased national deficit has only been a result of the Syrian refugees. If the conflicts continue in Syria, the consequences of the following countries will only get worse. This conflict is complicated. Syria is a difficult country to deal with, and its moral implications of its actions are hardly held accountable by the international community. The government has behaved wrong throughout history and continues to do so in the conflict today, which has resulted in the Middle East being caught in the crossfire. Innocent civilians are up against impossible odds, and the Syrian government is taking lives that isn't theirs. The government has chosen to ignore human rights, and those who are in that Tom's basement all over the Capitol have had simply enough.